Okay, when you think about the Arctic, you probably picture this vast, empty expanse of ice, right? Well, that picture is changing, and fast. The top of the world is rapidly becoming a new front in global competition, where decades of cooperation are being replaced by conflict. For decades, right after the Cold War, this really powerful idea governed the region. It was called Arctic exceptionalism, and the belief was basically that the Arctic was this unique zone of peace, a place where even rivals like the US and Russia could collaborate on science and environmental protection, totally insulated from conflicts happening elsewhere. But yeah, that era is completely over. Rising tensions between major world powers, and particularly Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, just shattered that peace. That whole partnership thing, it's gone, and a new, much more dangerous era has begun. This timeline really puts it into stark perspective, doesn't it? We're talking about decades of work, from Gorbachev's call for peace way back in '87 to the creation of the Arctic Council, and it all just came crashing down in 2022. That pause in the Council's activities, it didn't just slow things down, it effectively froze the main way these countries even talk to each other. So, this huge shift has created a massive strategic headache for the United States, forcing it to look at its own northern border in a totally new light. For years, the Pentagon kind of just treated the Arctic as flyover country. It was a buffer zone, a place to watch for enemy bombers coming over the North Pole. But now, as the ice melts, the Arctic isn't just a path to somewhere else. It's become a destination. And with that comes new chances for commerce, sure, but also brand new arenas for conflict. And here's the real problem. America's strategy has totally outpaced its capabilities. This quote really hits the nail on the head. The US just doesn't have the right tools for the job. It's lacking those ice-hardened ships, the specialized support, the whole infrastructure you need to operate year-round in that incredibly harsh environment. This has exposed some really critical leaks in what military folks call the Golden Dome of North American air defense. Its sensors are basically relics from the Cold War. They were designed to spot fast missiles, not the slow-moving drones and complex swarms of missiles we're seeing Russia use in Ukraine. This leaves the US dangerously exposed from what was supposed to be its quiet northern flank. Okay, so how do you plug these leaks? Well, to counter these new threats, the Department of Defense is turning to a new generation of tech. We're talking autonomous systems and AI. Think high-altitude balloons for constant surveillance and long-endurance drones that can provide a much more affordable and scalable defense network. All right, now let's flip over to the other side of the pole where Russia has its own grand ambitions for the Arctic. But as we're about to see, their dream of an Arctic superhighway is running into some very, very cold realities. Moscow has poured billions into something called the Northern Sea Route. It's a shipping lane right along its Arctic coast that they've been pushing as a major rival to the Suez Canal. Putin himself set this incredibly ambitious target, 80 million tons of cargo moving through there by 2024. So, how'd they do? Well, this chart tells the whole story. Russia didn't just miss its target, it missed by a mile, shipping less than half of what Putin demanded. And now, for the first time in years, those shipping volumes are actually shrinking. Not a good look. And this chart, this one reveals the route's fatal flaw. A staggering 83% of its traffic is oil and gas. And that's the very industry being hammered by Western sanctions and, just the simple reality of aging, depleting oil fields. So the bottom line is this. Russia has the infrastructure of an Arctic superpower. They've got the world's only fleet of nuclear icebreakers. But that dream is faltering. Why? Sanctions, logistical nightmares, and a real lack of partners. The superhighway is there, but the cargo, it just isn't showing up. This new era of competition isn't just creating friction between rivals, it's also straining some really old friendships. And this leads to a fascinating paradox in a key waterway between the US and its closest ally, Canada. Okay, so for decades, the US and Canada have held completely opposite views on the legal status of the Northwest Passage. Canada says, hey, these are our internal waters, we have full control. But the US sees it as an international strait, open to everybody. They've basically just agreed to disagree for a long time. But this whole agree to disagree thing creates a huge contradiction. The US respects Canada's claim up in the Arctic, but it actively challenges nearly identical claims by China in the South China Sea with its navy. This inconsistency, it creates a major credibility gap and really undermines America's legal arguments on the world stage. All of these conflicts, military, economic, legal, they're creating a new reality on the ground, and it comes with some profound human consequences. A new ice curtain is descending across the top of the world, and it's a lot like the Iron Curtain that once divided Europe. It's splitting the Arctic into these competing military political blocs and completely reversing decades of cooperation. But look, this isn't just some line on a map. This new curtain cuts directly through the ancestral homelands of Arctic indigenous peoples like the Sami and the Inuit. It's dividing communities, it's silencing cooperation, and in Russia, it's leading to disproportionate military recruitment that has literally hollowed out entire villages. This quote makes the stakes just devastatingly clear. For some of the smallest indigenous nations, the war in Ukraine isn't some distant conflict, it's an existential threat. Like the quote says, every single combat death poses a potential threat to the survival of the entire ethnos, their entire cultural group. Which leaves us with this really critical question. The Arctic was once this beacon of peaceful post-Cold War cooperation, but as the physical ice keeps thawing, it's becoming tragically clear that the geopolitical landscape is freezing over once again.